Okay. Well, welcome everyone to the 35th meeting for the Committee for Finance in the 22 to 27 mandate, and our first meeting in an external venue. We're just saying we are here at NICVA because we've just had a really excellent and I think informative and pretty robust at times joint session with the Economy Committee. We obviously also joint and chaired the Economy Committee. Chair just happens to also be a member of this committee. Really positive event. Thank you, our staff, the clerical, Peter and the clerk staff for facilitating that event. Members, this committee meeting will not be, live streamed as normal. It will be recorded, and an audio recording will be available on the Listen Again facility in due course. Don't use that as an excuse to make strange faces. Normal standards of professionalism are expected. But those who are in the room, as always, you are intended to use mobile phones, but put them on silent or airplane mode, and you can connect to the guest Wi-Fi, and the details are available to you, and the staff will make them available to you if you don't have them. As normal, as always, it's not permitted to take photographs or record the meeting. In the event of a fire emergency, please leave the building promptly and calmly by the route advised by the fire wardens, which will be the nearest safe exit. Look for the green signs, and fire wardens will direct you to the NICVA car park to the left of the building. Agenda item 1 is apologies. We received one apology from Steve Aiken. As I said, I will have to depart the chair somewhat early today. Agenda item 2 is declaration of interests. As always, we're obliged to declare any relevant interest. Does anyone wish to declare an interest at this stage? No. Okay. The next agenda item is from the Northern Ireland Assembly Joint Budget Event, Committee for Finance and Committee for the Economy, and that's at page 6 to 60 of the meeting pack. Members, you will already have considered these papers as part of this morning's joint event, so they are for noting only at this point. Unless anybody really wants to discuss or share any reflections on the event we just had, we will obviously be completing a report on that event, and with a view to having a debate on the floor of the Assembly. I would just say that I think it was an extremely worthwhile, useful exercise on a cross-party, cross-committee basis. The issues that came up were as expected, but perhaps the severity of the situation being faced by parts of our business community, businesses of different sizes, but with a particular emphasis on the retail and hospitality businesses that serve the high street, and also the pressures that are going to be faced by parts of the community and voluntary sector. And we discussed both the impact of the UK budget in relation to the living and minimum wage increases and employer net contributions, but also potential mitigations here via the rate system, and the need to use the rate system and other levers to mitigate the impact of what came from the UK budget, and indeed long-term, or perhaps not quite as long-term as we appear to be having at the minute, need for reform of the rate system. So we are going to look forward to a report on what we discussed, but very rich feedback. We encouraged all the participants to send us more written evidence relevant to all these issues, but also to engage with us on what we're talking about later on today, which is our banking and financial services landscape review. So if people are content and everyone else is happy, just reiterate my thanks to the committee staff for facilitating and working very hard on preparing that event in conjunction with the Economy Committee, which was in addition to just preparing for a normal committee meeting and indeed an off-site committee meeting, which has been a lot of work for them. And we've just rocked up here today like politicians to do our usual talking, which is our job, but huge amount of work has gone on in the background. So thank you very much to the team for that. We really appreciate it. Folks, agenda item 3.8 is the primary legislation table. Members, at page 61 of the meeting pack, you will see that we agreed to the committee team would design a table which would be sent to the Department of Finance on a regular basis to update the committee in relation to progress of primary legislation. So, members, we agreed to use this table to forward to the department for updating on a monthly basis. We're agreed.
In this stage, Chair, that's a really useful template, and may find its way to other committees to encourage them to use it too. But it's very, very good.
I think that's a good idea. If we wanted to, for goody two shoes in our committee, if we wanted to forward it to other committees for the purposes of harassing their departments, I think that would be a good idea. Item 3.9 is modelling the Northern Ireland economy within the context of the all-island economy. Members, that's at page 63 of the meeting pack. I suggested that we included in this week's pack. I don't have a. I'm looking at it in a private or a party capacity. I don't have a particular discussion point. It's to note at this point, unless anybody wishes to raise it. But I think it would be one that I may come back to at some point in the future, unless anybody else wishes to make a comment on it.
Just the same, be worth looking at.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I think we're. I should take one hat off and put another one. I believe there may be a motion in relation to some of these matters in the Assembly next week that someone called the Leader of the Opposition has tabled, but I have no idea. So I can't, I'm the chair of the Finance Committee for the rest of this meeting. But anyway, we can talk about that in separately. Okay, the next agenda is a Hansard extract from the Economy Minister rebates proposals. The Economy Minister indicated that the Finance Minister, quote, would bring rates proposals to the Executive shortly. And I think she intends to provide as much as she can do to the business community. So that was an extract from the Economy Minister. So members will be aware that the rates proposals did not get onto the Executive's agenda, and the Economy Minister, we assume, is referring to the consultations around the rates roadmap. That was something we followed up on, but we're waiting more detail. And I think particularly after today's session, we will want more detail from Minister's rates.
It's also worth flagging off. I've emailed members the consultation that's to go out for domestic rates. So that would have gone out prior to the event earlier on today. There was also an email I forwarded that was a further drawdown from the consultant regarding pensions. We'll bring those back through the next week's meeting pack so members can discuss them, but just to flag up, they were emailed on earlier on too.
So I should be given a bit of context. We discussed, the reason that we brought back to today's meeting was that we had discussed last week that this was mentioned on the floor of the Assembly, but we didn't have a lot of detail about what it was. I think it was an answer to an oral question. It was an answer to an oral question. We still don't know that much more, but we're kind of assuming that it refers to the roadmap. Okay. The next agenda item is draft minutes of the meeting of the 22nd of January. Members, that's at page 90 of the meeting pack. If members are content that those minutes are a true reflection of the proceedings of the meeting held on the 22nd of January.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'll sign them. I will sign them. Okay. Now, the next agenda item is matters arising. 5.1 is the opportunities that arise from financial transactions, capital usage, and that is at page 110 of the meeting pack. We previously wrote to the Minister regarding the need to increase the uptake of financial transactions capital, and finance ministers over several number of years now have been getting these letters with increasing concern about the failure of the Executive to properly deploy or to fully deploy financial transactions capital. And as you heard in the January monitoring session, currently, as we sit 3 months out from the end of the financial year, we are 50 million under allocated. We have 50 million of FTC, which is underutilised. Now, it's not conventional underspend like Resourcedale. It's not handed back. It is used to effectively lower the rate of repayment on existing FTC allocations. So in that sense, it's not money that's handed back and not spent. But it is deeply disappointing that that it's underused, given the potential, as we've discussed, for particular things, not limited to, for example, regeneration. But anyway, the ministers indicated that officials continue to engage with other departments, the Strategic Investment Board, and a range of others for around the underutilisation of FTC, and that a more detailed study is not required. The Minister will continue to pursue opportunities for increasing the use of FTC, as well as regularly pressing her ministerial colleagues to consider other uses of this funding. At last week's meeting, members again agreed to ask the Department for details on what further work has been done to improve the uptake of FTC. I have to say, members, I'm a bit disappointed that there doesn't appear to be a target or a specific work stream other than encouragement, gentle continuing to work on encouraging people. I really think that it would be helpful to understand if the executive has some kind of priority or plan or target for deploying more FTC. But that's a personal view, so I'm keen to hear others. Do you have to take any comments?
No, sure, I share your view. You know, we get up week after week in the assembly and say not enough money, need to have more money, but we're not. And this is not just the only fund, but there are other funds that we're not fully utilising. So we can't, on the one hand, say that we're in a very difficult financial position and there are particular constraints on this. But you know, maybe the department needs some, or the executive as a whole needs some. But you know, do an event on this, a conference on this, something that brings together private sector partners to put this up in lights to say this is your opportunity to get funding.
So, I was going to suggest in theory,
And I was going to say maybe as well, once the 5-year budget plans and stuff's kind of longer term planning, I think should help, you would hope, rather than the year on year. Would be good that maybe to look to see how it's used or drawn down elsewhere as well, just to kind of, you know, balance it off with other key sectors or areas, and I suppose that maybe to do a type of engagement about then on the back of that information.
Can I make a suggestion as a committee rather than, as I said, I am disappointed in the department's response, but I think it's not all the best use of our kind of resource, and pulpit is not necessarily always to go to the department, perhaps to go laterally and do some research. So can I suggest we perhaps think about asking Ray's to do a little bit of work on, I'm fairly sure this was done, this desk research. I would bet a large amount of money, if I had a large amount of money, that some of this was done already by Ray's in the previous manager.
We're aware,
So they don't
what your previous manager. What we'll do is we would seek an update.
Yes, that would be good.
Some difficulty in trying to find comparables.
Yeah.
Ray's may well do a better job.
Yes.
But
They're devil there. I mean, obviously it's other jurisdictions of the UK have it, so there are obvious comparisons. As FTC is every Wales and Scotland presumably use it for things, but the other one is SIB. I think those are two starters for 10. I think we should approach SIB and ask for a written briefing with a view to an oral briefing from SIB on it. I think we can keep that, go from there if people are content. Yes, dear Darren.
Also keen, I mean, I know Neary we're downstairs, but even if there are challenges or constraints, if we were trying to look at changing maybe potential aspects of, you know, how we could, is there maybe a broader, could they engage them as part of that?
Jared, just
kind of broad.
We should definitely, yeah.
Because I'm probably going to regret this at some point, but I'm just picking up on Mr. Brett's idea, the conference idea. I'm conscious of the fact that it shouldn't have happened. I'm conscious of the fact that with Ray's, they'll be able to do secondary research. In terms of primary research, perhaps it might be a case of having to look at the academics more broadly, or the institute, or other places, for that potential creativity. If members are content, we'll act on what's already been suggested.
Yes.
We might also then look at talking to our stakeholder groups that we might be able to seek primary research information from.
Yes.
Or even potentially get them to do something.
So I think we can come either this week or the week after with an update on further information. Keep this in our minds that this is something I think we should definitely be engaged on. But I think we're all simply going back to the department, which we can all do in our own capacity. I think it might be helpful to start with Ray's, SIB, and any other stakeholders who can give us their insight. And there may be other people we haven't thought of. And Nevin, for example, is certainly a good potential interlocutor. Okay, members who can yes, all through.
It's nearly as if the departments, the FTC is nearly an afterthought. It's nearly as if they're all busy working on their own wee silos, own wee parameters and their responsibilities. And so, you know, we're in a fiscal position, challenging fiscal position, and we just keep our heads down and work away. And it might be the case that each department has to have an official who is actually responsible for FTC spend.
Yeah.
And in that way, then they'll be the ones that'll push it within departments.
It's important to say part of the challenge might be that in one sense, in an academic sense, it isn't spend. It is it's a form of financing, but that requires a degree of it might be that it is it involves a bit of creativity and a bit of lateral thinking, and that's not saying our civil servants are very more than capable of doing those things, but it's not quite as straightforward as thinking this money is being allocated to this thing. So can I suggest we take those actions away and we'll come back to them and we can, and I think that it's really important that we pursue this. Okay, members are content. The next agenda item is the Minister of Finance's independent review of need. That's at page 113 of the pack. And it was also emailed to members last Wednesday and noted at the committee meeting the same day. The Minister indicates that the department has reached an agreement in principle to appoint Professor Jerry Holtham. That is to note the correspondence at this point. 5.3 is the Department of Finance, City and Growth Deals Quarterly Progress Report. There are various updates, and that's to note, unless anybody wishes to comment on it. Diane?
Yeah, Chair, just to bring it up again for our next quarterly update, could we consider maybe arranging that at a site of one of the City Gate projects? We had mentioned it before.
Yes, good idea.
We have a few in mind, Chair.
5.4 is the Dallow readout response. It relates to the NICVA staff handbook. This has been a subject of interest to one particular committee member, entirely legitimately, but can I suggest that if that committee member wishes, they articulated it, but if he wishes to bring it back up at a future date, that's fine. But unless anybody wishes to, it's about one amendment to this NICVA staff handbook. People agreed? Okay. Great. The next is Committee for Education, new IT system for schools. Members of page 127 of the meeting pack. This item was also this item was also tabled at last week's meeting, but members agreed to bring it back to this week's meeting to allow members more time to consider it in further detail. The EA has indicated that the EDIS I'm not sure how to pronounce that, the EDIS Strategic Partner and School Management System project was cancelled as it had become apparent that a milestone within the contract was not going to be achieved. This posed a potential risk to the continuity of services to schools, which, quote, was likely to be catastrophic to schools and the wider education system in Northern Ireland. The Education Authority has stated that there is no continued involvement of Fujitsu in the EDIS programme. That is to note this correspondence unless anybody wishes to. I think it's worth saying that I think on its face that's quite concerning, and I would suggest the Education Committee may want to pursue this. I'm not sure if one for us to pursue, but it does seem on its face to be a pretty concerning issue. It's probably also a concerning issue given the business partners, the other private companies involved. That's to note, really. People showing our job a bit.
I brought this on, it was headlined at BBC. One day we were sitting in the committee and we were talking about Fujitsu, and then we had raised this. I've read this first paragraph or first caption over and over again. I still can't make any sense of it, but it looks scary, as you've already rightly said. So it's not for us, but I do think we should, maybe go back to the Education Committee and say, look, we're scared. We don't really understand this. You might want to look at this because just see, even the language they use is quite catastrophic.
I agree. We should definitely share it with the Education Committee with a view to expressing our own concern about the seriousness of the apparent issue. So members are content? Okay. I'll be vacating the chair after this item, folks, and very helpfully the Deputy Chair will be filling in very ably. Item 5.6 is the Hansard transcript of the Budget Sustainability Plan and the draft budget for the Department of Finance. Members, that's at page 131 of the meeting pack. The Hansard transcript from the Department's evidence to the committee on 15th of January in relation to the Budget Sustainability Plan and draft budget 25-26. That's there. It's for member consideration. That's to note, unless anybody wishes to make any comment on it. Nope.
Nope, great. Thank you.
I hand over now to the Deputy Chair, and thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So moving to the tabled pack, item 5.7, Department of Finance 24-25's supplementary estimate memorandum, referring members to page 3 of the tabled pack. The Department's provided a copy of its memorandum for 24-25 SSEs. This will be incorporated into the SSEs document, which is due to be published in the coming weeks. The memorandum sets out the main components of the Department's final budget for 24-25, shown as resource and capital DEL. A comparison is also provided between 23-24 outturn, 24-25 main estimates and 24-25 SSEs, with the main causes for change and spending trends over the last 3 years detailed. Seek members' agreement to note this information for now and agree it's brought back to next week's meeting once members have had some time to digest it. Great. Thank you. Item 5.8, the Examiner of Statutory Rules 30th report. SR 217/2024, the Government Resources and Accounts Northern Ireland Act 2001, Estimates and Accounts Designation of Bodies, Amendment Order 2024. Refer members to page 13 of the tabled pack. The examiner has reported on a statutory rule which was agreed by this committee on the 15th of January, subject to the examiner's report. The examiner has not drawn any matters to this committee's attention in relation to SR 217/2024, the Government Resources and Accounts Northern Ireland Act 2001, Estimates and Accounts Designation of Bodies, Amendment Order 2024. Therefore, this report is for noting only. Thank you. And I seek the agreement of the committee that Hansard should report on this next oral briefing.
Great.
Okay, so moving to agenda item 6 is our Northern Ireland banking and financial service landscape. We have got an oral briefing from NICVA. If I refer members to page 148 of the meeting pack for a clerk's memo relating to this item, and the date should be 29th of January. The relevant papers are as follows. We've got a NICVA briefing paper at page 152 of the meeting pack, Voluntary Organisation Banking Guide at page 157 of the meeting pack, Charity Banking Challenges Report at page 174 of the meeting pack, and Hansard transcript of the Retail NI oral evidence session on the 15th of January at page 228 of the meeting pack. Just ask members to note these papers and agree that they will be added to our committee report in due course. Great. Thank you. And I would like to welcome to the meeting Denise Copeland, Governance and Charity Advice Manager at NICVA. We're delighted to have you here at the committee today, and thanks again to NICVA and a wider front for hosting us here today. We've had a great event and would invite you to make some opening remarks. Okay.
Thank you very much, Chair, and good afternoon, members. NICVA is grateful to the committee for the opportunity to provide a briefing on the banking issues that the voluntary and community organisations have been facing. NICVA has been working with other representatives of the voluntary and community sector and charity regulators across the UK as part of the civil society group on charity banking issues for over 2 years to highlight the issues that charities and other not-for-profit organisations are experiencing with their bank accounts. The issues started to emerge during COVID when many of the banks stopped offering bank accounts to new organisations, while some of the high street banks, but not all, are now offering a bank account for charities and voluntary organisations. The wait time to get the account opened is unreasonable. It can take up to 3 months or even longer. Over the last few years, many organisations with existing bank accounts have experienced issues with trying to maintain their bank account. The issues which NICVA has gathered along with the Rural Community Network, and you can also see from the Charity Banking survey, can be summarised as follows. Bank accounts being frozen and in some cases closed. Dual authorisation not always provided, even though it's something that charity regulators would encourage charities to have in place as a step to mitigate fraud. Bank not accepting the charity's governing document, especially older trustees. The banks not communicating what the issues are with digital uploads that the charities are trying to upload using their processes. And the bank call centre staff not being able to tell what the issues are. Trustees needing to attend a branch in person for ID verification. The bank not sending letters to the current signatories of the account. Banks losing the information, the ID verification that trustees have travelled to the bank to give. All trustees having to provide personal information and not just the signatories with some banks, and banks charging monthly fees for providing the account, and difficulty opening a bank account on the high street. Now, some of the causes for this here, we believe, is that bank closures and a move to digital have resulted in a lack of client-facing bank staff that have knowledge of the voluntary sector legal structures. Having to update the business bank profile digitally has caused issues as the bank uses language that is unfamiliar or inappropriate for charities, and some digital processes are not user-friendly. For example, not explaining why the uploaded documents are not accepted, or they accept them, and then you get a letter telling you to do the exact same thing again. In many, if not most cases, the bank's processes and requirements are designed for businesses, which causes significant problems for voluntary and community organisations. Issues have also emerged with the bank's overzealous approach to prevent fraud, money laundering and terrorist financing. Some banks are now asking for more detail and ID verification from charities about their whole committee and not just the bank account signatories, which had been in the past. Each bank has its own specific requirements and processes, We have heard of various instances of charity bank accounts being frozen by their bank, and in some cases the bank account being closed altogether. This can happen when updating the bank mandate or when the bank asks that the business profile be updated online. As the digital processes are designed for businesses, they do not use language appropriate for charities, and the call centre staff in a lot of instances are not able to help as they don't seem to know what the problem is or they don't have access to what the problem is. The process can go on for up to a year or over as the bank keeps asking for more information, but not all at the same time. The complexity of the process and the lack of intuitiveness from the bank's digital systems are very stressful and frustrating for trustees, many of whom are volunteers. The introduction of monthly fees on some bank accounts has also left limited options of free banking for charities. So do the banks know that this is an issue? Well, in short, yes, because we've been telling them for the last 2.5 years. This is a UK-wide issue, and we've been working with other representatives of the sector along with charity regulators across the UK to highlight these issues to get an improved offering from the banking sector. Part of this work involved working with UK Finance, which is the trade association for retail banks, to highlight the issues to the banks. UK Finance's response was to create a banking tool that would encourage better understanding of each other. For example, the legal structures that the voluntary sector uses and the process and language used by the banks, so we could both learn from each other. That was our understanding at the time anyway. NICVA, along with other civil society group partners, provided significant amounts of time and expertise to help ensure that the guidance was relevant and accurate, as well as helping identify areas of potential confusion that needed to be resolved. The banking guide was published in July 24, but is not the be-all and end-all and certainly doesn't solve the problems. This guide could and should be an invaluable educational tool for banks to improve their systems and skill their staff on legal structures used by the voluntary and community sector. It all now depends, though, on each individual bank to decide whether or not they are going to improve their internal systems and processes with the knowledge from this accessible digital knowledge tool. There is a feeling, however, that all banks do not have an interest in making substantive changes to their processes, as this will cost money, and they are not making a lot of money on small charity bank accounts. We therefore need pressure from government and the FCA to make sure that the required changes to fulfil their customer duty happens and that the direction comes from the top. The Charitable Sector Banking Forum. The civil society group, in its work with UK Finance, had the expectation that this would be a type of forum where we would relay the issues to the banks, but that was not the case. So the Charity Finance Group, with the backing of the wider civil society group partners, set up the Charitable Sector Banking Forum, which met for the first time in July. The forum includes civil society group members, charity regulators, UK Finance and bank officials, and it's an opportunity where we get to engage with the banks without a middleman holding back the information. What are the regulators doing about this? As part of the civil society group, we have also met with Treasury officials, charity regulators and sought advice from the Competition and Markets Authority. We have also participated in the FCA's roundtable event with the banks and civil society group partners and charities in September. The FCA told banks that they expect firms to be considerate of the consumer duty, which also applies in relation to ensuring that products and services meet the needs of customers. Our own Charity Commission, along with the charity regulators across the UK, issued an open letter to the UK's main high street banks last year requesting that banks take urgent action to help charities have access to proper banking services. The Charity Banking Challenges Report was launched in November past. This survey was carried out by the Charity Finance Group partners on behalf of the Civil Society Group on banking issues across the UK. The report reflects that the most common issue involve administration and communication challenges, both of which often arise from the bank's insufficient understanding of how voluntary organisations are structured, how they are governed and managed. The most frequently reported issue relates to the process of adding or removing signatories on bank account mandates. You can see from the graph in your briefing paper that 75% of all respondents had issues with changing signatories on their bank account. Much time and effort has been spent to date on highlighting the issues to the key stakeholders, and NICVA will continue to work as part of the civil society group to advocate for better banking for voluntary and community organisations. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Denise. That's incredibly valuable and highlights a lot of things that I know that on a constituency basis I would get quite regularly, especially they would comment with a lot of small groups with their signatories having trouble getting them changed, having bank accounts froze and real barriers to them accessing funding. I just wanted to ask, so obviously the Finance Minister's been having banking roundtables. Are you playing a part in that?
Yes, I attended the Finance Minister's banking table, and they have just sent through the minutes of that meeting, which happened in autumn last year, and they will be compiling a report and sending it to the Treasury. So we raised the issues there, and it was a good opportunity to meet other members of UK Finance at that table, where we were able to express that the banking tool is not going to solve the problems.
Yeah, no, that's brilliant that you're there, because just so many very specific issues facing this sector. So that's really good to hear that you're involved in that. That is being brought forward. I'm just bringing in some other members here. Philip Brett.
Thank you, Chair. And Denise, firstly, thank you. I know how much of a help you and your staff have been to a lot of groups in my constituency about going about setting up their bank accounts. So thank you for that. But I think it speaks to the issue that, and particularly my office deals with them, that you're having to deal, that we're having to support groups and organisations, and of course we're happy to do it, but it shouldn't take the involvement of specialists to try and help people who are either charities, residents, groups who are investing in society and going out of their way to help the community which they operate in. It was a burden to them trying to even set up a bank account.
Yeah.
I'm just keen to try and get some your views in relation to the charges. So not only are we seeing a monthly charge for accounts, but say organisations are putting in checks or writing checks, then there's charges for that. Statements, which is required for verification purposes, are being charged for that. So just wondering, was there much feedback from your membership in terms of the actual cost of having and maintaining a bank account?
Yeah, I mean, we can see that it's increasingly difficult to get free banking for charities. After the UK Finance banking tool was launched, they have included like a bank account finder as part of that. So from that, I did a Northern Ireland Pacific one and it's on our website. I can send you a link to it afterwards. But it includes a comparison of high street bank accounts and some online accounts as well. And you can see there are some free bank accounts, but on the high street, they can take a long time to set up. So I think we would encourage people to think about banking differently. We traditionally would look at, well, what's on our high street, what banks are there, and charities would have tended to open a bank account there. But now they need to think about, what are my banking needs? That bank could be closed next year. That mightn't be there. Branch mightn't be there next year. So if it's online banking that you can do, and if you can lodge your money and your checks via the post office, a lot of the banks now allow you to do that via the post office. So perhaps that is a better option, and it's something that I think charities, maybe we need to get our heads around and think about using online accounts, even bank accounts that aren't on our high street here, but on the high street in England, for example. Yeah. You can set up a bank account with them and do online banking and use the post office then to deposit your money and your checks.
And in terms of that important engagement that you have been doing on behalf of the sector, and it's good that you've been involved in that, have you seen any move, particularly on the Northern Ireland high street banks, that they've listened to the concerns that you've raised and they've acted accordingly? It's just at some stage this committee will hopefully have representations from the bank, and they may say to us, we're involved in discussions and processes, but what we're interested in is what actual tangible changes that they have made to actually make your life and those of the you represent easier.
Yeah. And we'd love to know that too, Philip. We agree, yeah. And then as part of the banking forum, we're hoping to tease that information out. We're having another meeting with the banks and the banking forum on the 20th of February. Okay. And I understand that maybe one or two banks over in England, maybe not so much a presence here, I know you're asking about Northern Ireland, have made, have regressed to try and make changes and have like a dedicated person, for example, staff member, which they haven't had since COVID, to help charities and community bank accounts. But I couldn't tell you overall what what progress we're seeing with Northern Ireland bank accounts. We've got to remember as well, some of the banks here, they are subsidiaries. Their parent bodies are in England. So their parent bodies might be on the banking forum group, and they're saying they are trying, but we're not. So the bank might be saying they're trying, but we're not seeing the reality on the ground. There's no difference with some of the banks. We're seeing the same issues.
And just finally from me, Chair, obviously we have a slightly different landscape here in Northern Ireland with the particular prevalence and in a good way of the credit union. I just wanted to check in terms of the product that they offer for charity or community organisations.
Yeah.
Do they offer a product for charities to be able to use a full bankable facility?
Some credit unions do and some don't.
Yeah.
It all depends on the credit union in your local area. So you would have to speak to them.
Yeah.
And I think it comes down to maybe the size of the
Yeah.
credit union and how much money they have to take on the risk of doing that.
But thank you so much.
Okay.
Thank you. Deirdre Hargey. Yeah, no, thanks very much. And for your paper as well. It's really good. Just followed on from Philip's in terms, because we're trying to look at this even beyond the known banking firms that exist, and in terms of where we could potentially do things differently. So there's always been talk of a mutual bank, and it's just to see whether that's formed any part of your discussions in terms of NICVA here, or even your discussions in other jurisdictions as well. And also the role of credit unions, could their services potentially be expanded? Where profit is actually recycled back into the local economy in terms of meeting local and specific needs to here.
Yeah.
And the other bit that you touched on around whether it's the opening of accounts, whether it's new emerging technology, the advancement of AI, all these things, a lot of the organisations are volunteer run and based. So something around, I suppose, the capacity and skills, what challenges that presents, likely to present. Yeah. And I suppose then what you feel the department could be doing then to assist in some of those areas.
Yeah. So in terms of the credit unions, apparently the credit union movement here in Northern Ireland is a lot stronger than it is across the water. We have discussed that at the civil society group on banking issues. We meet every fortnight to try and progress and keep these issues going. So we're quite strong here in Northern Ireland with the credit union sector, but it is up to each individual credit union whether they would be able to do that or not. And I know some do offer that service, but others aren't able to. Perhaps maybe they don't have maybe they're more voluntary run than having staff that could help out with that there. In terms of the digital skills, yes, there is a piece of work in updating digital skills for the sector as a whole and probably society, but we're not seeing with the banking issues that the digital skills being an issue. And in fact, the charity banking report, can't remember what the figure was, but there's a majority of people want to use digital. They want to use banking. It's not, the problem isn't that they don't have the skills to use the banking. The problem is that the digital offering by the banks is not intuitive. It's built for businesses. It's not for charities. If I can give you an example, I'm a trustee of a very small charity with no employees. We're all digitally savvy people on the committee, but we were having an issue with our bank, and every month our treasurer, who's an accountant, was uploading the information that was being asked for. Then you would get a letter the next month saying, we need more information. And then it got to the point where it needed a letter verifying that the constitution of the trustee was, and we were who we said we were, it needed to be from an accountant or solicitor. And it said in that there that if there was an in-house accountant or solicitor, they could sign that. So she signed that and uploaded it. The next month we got a letter saying you need to update your business bank profile. So our treasurer would go back in and there was no different information. She would upload it. You sign in, says you need to upload this document. The next month we would get another letter. And this went on and on every month and every month. She's then ringing the call centre and going, why does this keep happening? What am I doing wrong? They're not able to tell her. or other times she would ring and they would say, oh, don't worry about it, it's an automated process. And then our volunteers that went to lodge money in the bank in Omagh got told when the day they went in to lodge the bank that the account was frozen. So we had no notification as trustees from the bank that this had happened. And we then, that was volunteers who we knew very well. And so they know that we could be trusted. But you can see the reputational damage that would be for others that maybe, didn't have the same, know us and know we're doing everything right and explain the issues. Now, with that there process, it took the treasurer several phone calls. She got nowhere. It took the chair then to get on and ring and lengthy conversation to finally get to the bottom of it. And it turned out to be this letter that the treasurer had signed. Nobody could tell her for a whole year before that. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. So we complained really, really sternly to the bank about what had happened and about the bank account being frozen, and they put £400 by way of compensation into our bank account, which we thanked them for, but it did not negate the stress that everyone felt about the bank account. And unfortunately, one of our trustees has passed just before Christmas, and we're going to have to go through the whole process again of updating the bank mandate. And we're fearful of it because we don't know what's going to happen again, if we're going to have that whole process again. So that just gives you a small insight into the it's not that we don't have the digital skills, it's that the digital processes aren't intuitive.
And feeding back to one of your first issues is the direct face-to-face contact.
That's right.
The banks, more than we call and stuff as well.
And on that there, Deirdre, with this particular bank, our branch is in Armagh. And our chair went into the branch to try and sort it out. They couldn't help her. Said, no, you have to ring the call centre. So there's quite a lot of branches around Northern Ireland and couldn't help us if I had to ring a call centre that doesn't know anything about what we're asking. So I'm sorry, what was the third thing you asked, Deirdre? Sorry.
No, that was it, I think.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think you, Denise, that's a really important example, I think, to note. And I know myself that it's actually putting people off being trustees, just the example that you gave, because, as an accountant, I'm in a whole lot of these circles where they cannot get accountants to sit on boards because the time commitment now, because of the amount of time required by banks for the trust, for the treasurer, who is the accountant, to sit making those types of phone calls. So it really is putting the governance of the charities at risk. Of an important point, definitely, Jerry Carroll.
Thanks, Denise. Thanks for that. We used to hear those problems. Fortunately, I've heard them myself from organisations in my own constituency and others probably as well. Maybe an obvious question, but worth asking. Do you have any idea why it's so cumbersome to kind of open and maintain these bank accounts? Because obviously, there should be some form of verification of people. Excuse me, but it seems to be the banks are making it really onerous and difficult for organisations. So, I have no answer to my own question, but I just thought I'd ask to see if you have any insight or have it moved your way. It's gonna take a long.
I think prior to COVID, when you went into your bank, you did the bank mandate. You did it in branch, you did it in house, and with COVID, I believe the staff, the front facing staff, with that knowledge, the knowledge of the people coming in, with their customers, of the charities coming in and doing their banking, they were assigned to other work. I think it was the loans, the bounce back loans, whatever that was offered at the time, and they were never, I don't think, reassigned to the front face. And I think it's the banks as well. It's their approach to adhering to money laundering regulations. And some of the banks, the different approach that they take. For example, one bank will say all of the trustees, so if there's 16 people in your committee, those 16 have to go in and do the ID verification. Okay. Another bank will say, okay, it's the 3 trustees or 4 trustees that's on the bank mandate. Both are saying they're following money laundering. They're doing it because of money laundering regulations. So we are asking, well, if you're following money laundering regulations and you're following money laundering regulations, who's right and who's wrong? And there's then the different banks just have different risk approach to that. at the UK Finance Working Group, as part of that work, we were asking the banks, well, why can you not use the same language? I mean, it's difficult enough. We already use different language, but different banks using different language and different terminology for different things, like significant controllers, where we would talk about trustees, beneficial owners, has a completely different meaning in the banking world to beneficiaries in the charity world. So we are asking, why can't you just get together and use the same terminology? And we were told, oh, competition law, we're not allowed to share information. So we wrote to the Competition and Markets Authority and we said, is this true? Can they share information? And apparently, when it's for the greater good, like that there for what we were talking about, that example, they could do. So sometimes legislation and rules, regulations are being used as an excuse for why they have their systems and processes. But if they invested time and effort into their digital processes, I don't think it's a lot to make it easier for charity trustees. And if I can just give you the example in that, when our Charity Commission, every year charities have to file annual monitoring returns with the Charity Commission. When they were designing that process, they would have consulted with us in the sector. We would be a critical friend of the Charity Commission, and we would say, they've now put in information buttons alongside a lot of questions. Say, this is exactly what we mean by this amount. We want your income, your turnover. This is exactly what we mean. So why can't the banks do that? Why can't they look at other digital systems that work really, really well? There's plenty of them out there. It's just there seems to be an unwillingness with some of the banks to do it. And I think definitely if there was a conversation in the boardroom of the banks, it might be different.
Thank you very much. I mean, imagine banks are sharing all sorts of info day and daily, but the fact that you're putting in a moderate request to kind of have some kind of template to use, I think is a very sensible and in fact moderate request. And then the FSU, the Financial Services Union, have always said to myself and the committee, I think, about the loss of staff in banks, and obviously that's probably had an impact as well in terms of that difficulty with getting accounts open. Now, a question for me, Denise. I think you touched upon it maybe earlier about the issues of people with limited ID or no ID. Can you maybe just expand upon that? And obviously, NICVA represents a very diverse group of people. You hadn't found any problems with people, say, newcomers who are involved in the community voluntary sector, a very important part of it, but can't open bank accounts or can't do that process because of very strict forms of ID. So you experiencing like that?
Yeah, I mean, we've actually one example of somebody I know was during or just after COVID, and they were trying to set up a bank account for to set up a canoeing group, and this person, her husband, all the bills are in his name, so she didn't have any household bills or anything in her name because they were all in her husband's name. And I was thinking, my poor husband, if he goes to join a charity, he's going to have the same problem because everything's in my name. But she didn't realise that was a problem until they needed ID verification. They needed 2 pieces of proof of utility bills, and she didn't have anything in her name, so she couldn't be a trustee then because they needed all of the trustees in that instance to provide ID verification. So it is gonna knock out some people from being trustees if the bank they choose requires you to have all trustees to verify. And of course, you won't know that till you're way down the process and buying for the bank account, because that's not something that they would put up and front load information.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Nicola. Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Denise, for your presentation there. You've kind of touched upon this already, but I suppose I represent a largely rural area in West Rome, and there's something that's lots of areas are facing, but in small towns and villages we are having, all our constituents are having issues with access to cash and access to banking services and that there. So I just wonder, I know you'd mentioned there about maybe liaising with the Rural Community Network, had you?
Yes.
And maybe what experiences they've had on the as charitable organisations, in the rural kind of aspect of it. Yeah, I'm assuming they're facing the same kind of challenges that our constituents are.
They are in the rural areas, and I suppose it's more difficult for those in the rural areas where they're all being told all of your trustees have to come in at the same time with your ID and maybe drive to Belfast to do ID verification, or drive 40 miles to another town, depending where they are in Northern Ireland. So yeah, it is a real issue, and it's just not particular to here. It's the exact same thing is happening in England and Scotland as well.
And it's even the running of the organisation, the day-to-day kind of banking. I know lots of community organisations not in our area would have to drive down a Skilling for a particular bank, and that's maybe a 40-50 mile round trip, and it's an area of frustration for them.
Yeah.
It was good. It's really, I imagine it's similar in the charity sector, that's really, but
yeah, it is the same, and I don't think we've seen the end of bank closures.
No.
As well. So I really do think we need to look at the online options and see what's available there. Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions, members? No? Well, thank you very, very much for that, Denise. Very informative, and thanks for all the good work that you do and all the different bodies that you're representing the sector on. I think it's incredibly important, and it's been great to have that as part of our inquiry. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dan. Thank you, friends. So bye-bye.
Mm-hmm. So it's good to hear that Denise is on the banking round table and working with the finance minister on that. And I think just checking in on how that is going will be important, just to follow up on what's going on there. I don't think there's any other points to follow up.
No, there's no further actions that come later.
No.
So this match, I don't know, became that I suppose what come out of the autumn meeting, they're going to put a letter to Westminster, so became just to see what the themes are in the. How will it fit into this?
Just like in encouragement, we've also found some information from NICVA around advice to charity and community sector and opening up bank accounts. So we put that in next week's pack, so members can agree to include that in inquiry.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you very much. So agenda item 7, correspondence. There are no items of correspondence this week. We got through a lot last week, so doing well. So agenda item 8 is the draft forward work programme. Refer members to the revised draft forward work programme at page 23 of the table pack, and ask the clerk to stick with that.
So, Chair, 12th of February, we've organised officials to come up on the budget bill. Members will recall that's tail end of the 24-25 budget. Also the SSEs, which we're starting now to see the final out workings on. And members will also have an opportunity then to discuss with officials the request for accelerated passage for the bill. We've got a briefing from development trusts and raise that day. So if members are agreeable, 12th of February will look to start at 1 p.m. And then similarly on the 19th, we've got 4 SL1s we're expecting. The department are going to brief on their own 25-26 budget position. And there's a joint oral briefing on the inquiry. So again, we're seeking members' permission to start at 1 p.m. on the 19th of February as well.
Sorry, is that the 12th on the 19th?
12th and the 19th. We put out further information on that, but if members are content, we can plan in that direction. Then our arrangements for the 2nd of April at the Kilkee Banking Hub are moving on a pace. We have a meeting scheduled at the Kilmore Arms Hotel, and we're getting in sort of, I suppose we can almost call them regional representatives from Chambers of Commerce to talk for the banking inquiry. And generally we'll get a chance to talk to them about other issues that members will want to as well. So our rough idea is visit to the banking hub 12:30, 1:15 lunch with those chamber representatives, and then starting at 2. We try and keep the meeting as light as possible, much like today, just so that we're not going on overly long, because I appreciate there'll be a bit of travel for a lot of members, although not everybody. The chair has already indicated his apologies for that day, and the deputy chair will be in the chair. So the date for the banks, we're provisionally looking at the 9th of April. So we're just now kind of getting to the nitty-gritty of who needs to come, who should be coming. There's 2 different types of issue here. There's the personal banking issue and there's the business bank issue. Some banks do
and significant about charitable bank issues. There needs to be another whole strand, I think.
So we're looking at just the feasibility of how many people we can get in front of us at any one time. So I'm waiting for UK Finance is talking to the banks, and they're going to come back to me on how that'll work best. because I'm just conscious of the committee room and the fact we can only get a certain number of witnesses at the table. So we might have to look at being creative as to bringing people in and letting people leave the table and so on. So that's with UK Finance at the moment. They're talking to the banking reps and we come back with detail on that. But we're provisionally looking at the 9th of April. So I said, 9th of April for that. Those are the highlights for now, Chair. So if
Okay.
members are content.
The seek members agreement for the forward work plan. Great. Thank you very much. Agenda item 9, any other business? Do any members have any business wish to raise? No. Grand. So agenda item 10, date, time and place of next meeting. Next committee meeting scheduled for Wednesday the 5th of February 2025 at 2 p.m. in the Senate Chamber Parliament buildings. And I put the question that the committee meeting does now adjourn.
Sure.
Perfect, Nikki.
For the next one down there.